Hi there, my name is Ethan Delano, and I've put together these highlights of the 2013 World Wingsuit League competition. If you would like more news about base proximity flying and extreme sports in general, subscribe to my channel and you won't be disappointed. Tony Uragallo took 8th place in this year's finals. In qualifying, with a time of 24.25 seconds, Tony was only 69/100ths of a second slower than James Boole, who was first, and there was a substantial gap between 8th place and 9th place, so I think the cut was made in the right spot. Tony founded and runs probably the largest manufacturer of wingsuits in the world, known as Tony Suits, but if not the largest, then certainly the fastest. 6 of the top 8 racers wore Tony Suits this year, after 7 out of the top 8 racers wore them last year. Tony's second run in the finals was his fastest, at 24.25 seconds, though he didn't manage to beat his qualifying time from the day before. Let's watch that run. It's hard to tell from the video because the inflatable pylons used in practice were destroyed by the wind the day before the race, but Tony takes a much wider turn than most of the other racers in the finals, which adds a few tenths of a second to his run. This was also Tony's last ever base jump, as he just announced his retirement at the age of 60 in an article on skydivemag.com on October 23, 2013. He may be retired from jumping, but I'm sure he'll be involved in the wingsuiting community for years to come. He certainly left his mark and finished on a high note. Next up, in 7th place, was Jon DeVore. He's the team manager of the Red Bull Air Force, whose current biggest claim to fame is appearing in Transformers 3, though they've done quite a few other things. Jon has been skydiving for 20 years and has over 18,000 skydives, more than anyone else in the finals. Jon also improved his time on the course in his second run and finished with a time of 24.09 seconds, only 69/100ths of a second slower than the winner. Let's watch his run. On both of Jon's runs, his exit was a little slow. His tail was flapping a few seconds after launch, something Jeb Corliss pointed out that probably cost him some acceleration in a few tenths of a second. Either way, after being in the finals both years of the World Wingsuit League, I'm sure we'll see him back next year. Espen Fadnes finished 6th this year after taking 2nd last year. Espen flew a Phoenix Fly Vampire and was one of 2 pilots in the finals not flying a Tony suit. The course was exactly the same as last year, and if Espen would have matched his time, he would have returned to the podium in 2nd. In fact, his qualifying time was nearly identical to last year's time at 23.58 seconds, and he was one of the favorites on betsafe.com going into the finals. Even though he didn't win a medal this year, he's one of the most consistent racers in the sport. Here's his fastest run in the finals. bad to say about his run, other than there might have been a little flapping of the tail on exit. Espen still holds the 4th, 5th, and 7th fastest times ever on the course, so he's always going to be in the running. I look forward to watching him next year, and I'm sure he'll have a solid chance at the podium. Julian Boole won last year's race, and when the course was changed from the originally planned 3-turn layout back to last year's 1-turn course, he was certainly the favorite. Julian's first run was actually his fastest, but he was only in 3rd place at the end of the first round. In the second round, he actually had an automatic timer malfunction because the finish sensor didn't pick up his black-on-black setup. After manually checking his time, it was slower, so his first run stood, but he had slipped down to 5th place and off the podium at 45 hundredths of a second slower than first place. Let's watch that run now. Julian had a very interesting run, because even though he had a lot of flapping in his tail on exit, he made it to the halfway point 7/10 of a second faster than the fastest halfway point split by taking a really aggressive cut on the corner. However, his speed down the home stretch may have been impacted by such a sharp turn, as he lost enough time to fall into 3rd place. Julian still holds the fastest course time on record at 23.1 seconds flat, a full 3/10 of a second faster than the second fastest time ever recorded, which is quite a bit. We'll see Julian again next time. James Boole had the fastest time in qualifying this year at 23.56 seconds, good enough for 2nd place if it was in the finals. James flew a Tony suit with the rig container built into the suit, and you can definitely see that it's more streamlined than the other pilot setups. Just like in swimming with water resistance, wind resistance can slow you down. James finished 4th this year, and he's one of only 2 pilots to finish in the top 4 both years, the other being Jhonathan Florez, who finished just off the podium last year. Well, here's James' first run, which was his fastest. As we get to the fastest runs, there's not a lot to critique. James had a perfect exit and was practically even with the fastest time on the halfway split. He only missed the podium by 1/100th of a second, so it really just came down to nothing between his run and 3rd place. He was 1/10 of a second faster than he was last year, but still finished 1 place lower. I'd say good job overall. Now we're into the top 3, and we've actually got 2 newcomers. Vincent Descols was one of the least experienced pilots at the competition with only 400 skydives and 800 base jumps, but he certainly proved that he deserved to be there. Vincent was the other pilot not flying a Tony suit, as he had a Squirrel, which was one of the newer wingsuit manufacturers. Vincent was the only pilot to get one of his runs disqualified as he cut the corner too sharp on his second run, but his first run was good enough for third. Let's watch it now. Vincent had a solid run all the way through. It's good to see first-year competitors having success in the competition, and it shows that there isn't necessarily a dominant body type or technique, otherwise it would be the same top 3 pilots every year. Let's take a look at Vincent's view of the course. Bahnson is another new competitor this year. He's probably best known as the boyfriend of Roberto Mancino, though that's not entirely fair as he's a pretty accomplished skydiver himself. In only 8 years, he's got nearly 10,000 skydives, which gives him easily the most skydives per year of all the pilots at the competition. In the end, he finished second and has made a name for himself. Here's his run. As you'll see in a minute from his headcam point of view, Noah took a really aggressive line, cutting the corner really sharp and going all out on the home stretch. He was the only one I remember finishing below the red tree marker, which would mean he was flying the lowest run in the course. He did everything he needed in order to make a podium run, including the clean exit and the tight turn. While there certainly was no perfect line for the race course, Noah took a significantly different run than most, but it paid off with a second place time of 23.6 seconds. Hopefully next year we'll see some better camera angles to more easily compare each pilot's run. Now let's take a look at what Noah saw on his second run. Finally, that brings us to Jhonathan Florez, our 2013 World Wingsuit League champion. After finishing just off the podium last year, Jhonathan made the biggest improvement from 2012 to 2013 in terms of his fastest run and also in his final rank. Jhonathan was flying a brand new Tony suit model that he'd never been skydiving with, which is a risk he wouldn't normally take, but he was confident he could handle it and it paid off big time. The 0.2 of a second gap between first and second place was bigger than the gap between second and fourth. Here's his run. Technical points of Jhonathan's second run were perfect. His exit solid, his turn was sharp, and while his halfway split was 0.4 of a second behind the leader, he made up a ton of time on the final stretch. As you'll see on his point of view camera in a second, it looks like he's a little unstable after the turn, but that's just because he's going so damn fast that it's hard to keep perfectly flat. In the final half of the race, Jhonathan went nearly 0.75 of a second faster than anybody else, which is ridiculous. Before the race, Jhonathan Florez held 4 Guinness World Records for wingsuit flying, and now he's a world champion. He's already working on his next stunt in his home country of Colombia, where he'll do a flyby of the Monserrate Church. It'll be similar to his flyby of the Christ the Redeemer statue in Brazil, which you should really check out if you haven't already. There's nothing more I can say about Jhonny's jump, so I'll let him take it away with his reaction to his time.
We have a new first place. He just knocked them all out.
节目非常兴奋 ，Jhonathan 也非常的兴奋，他一直在尖叫，哇！因为这是到目前为止他听到的。
他感觉到了，他知道。
我相信有人告诉他的成绩了。
对，哥伦比亚的小亚森啊，对自己的成绩真是欣喜若狂了。
对，哇哦！所以对于我们的选手来说，取得好成绩对他们来说是天。